Welcome to another Erik Waite Whiskey Study. I'm celebrating a bourbon month here in March 2019, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Wild Turkey Revival Oloroso Sherry Cask Finished Kentucky Straight Bourbon. I did an uncorking of this with Kyle from Bourbon Blind. I'll put a link to that video at the end of this, so if you're interested in watching our dialogue, you want to check that out. This is a really interesting bottle. Some say that bourbons are a bit too monolithic. There's not enough variety in it. There's not as much variances in it. So during this month, I've been exploring some really interesting bourbons. I did the Jefferson's Ocean, which is actually finished in casks that spend some time out at sea. So they take on some salt and some briny notes. I did the Wild Turkey Long Grow, which also spent some time in some mesquite casks, so it had a different note there. I've had bourbons that were finished in bourbon casks. So this one is finished in an Oloroso sherry cask, which if you are a fan of Scotch whiskeys from the Highlands or from Speyside, such as Macallan or Glendronach, then I'm sure you've had a bottle that will spend some time, maybe even 100% time, in Oloroso sherry. So a quick note on Oloroso sherry: you have Fino sherry, you have Oloroso sherry, and then you have Amontillado, you have Palo Cantado, and then you have Pedro Jimenez, and then you have cream sherries. Basically, Fino is a very dry, light type sherry. It tends to have sort of grassy, nutty notes. Oloroso and Amontillado tend to have your darker fruit notes, fig, dates, raisins. And the Pedro Jimenez is actually a completely different grape. It's made from the Pedro Jimenez grape, and it's grown on completely different soils. So Fino, Oloroso, Amontillado, and Palo Cantado are all made from the Palatino grape and grown on Aloriza soils. So anyway, just to sort of an overview of the type of sherry cask. Usually when you're having a sherry cask finished or completely aged whiskeys, particularly Scotch, usually it's going to be Oloroso. So really interesting to try a bourbon that has then spent some time in an Oloroso sherry cask. So this has a really nice presentation, really lovely box here. It opens up, it's got little magnets here to help it close. Fits in here really tightly. The bottle itself, on the corner you have the turkey, which is sort of embossed on there. It actually has a metal top on there, which is really cool, and a nice large cork. But of course, we know what's most important beyond the presentation is the contents of the bottle. But before I get into this, here are my notes on this bourbon. Wild Turkey's Master Keep Revival is the third release in the Master's Keep series after the 17-year-old original and Decades, which paid tribute to Eddie Russell's 35th anniversary at Wild Turkey. Revival in turn is a tribute to Jimmy Russell's 64 years at Wild Turkey and is a nod to his limited release Wild Turkey Sherry Signature in the early 2000s. Revival, like Sherry Signature, is a bourbon finished in an Oloroso sherry cask. Unlike many sherry cask finished whiskeys that generally use barrels that held sherry for a single-digit years, the ones Eddie sourced, much like his father did, held sherry for 20 years. Both Decades and Revival are meant to celebrate the father and son team's 101 years of combined experience in the bourbon industry. A total of 1,600 cases of Revival were produced, originally released in June 2018. It's bottled at 101 proof or 50.5% alcohol by volume. It is a non-age statement bourbon, although it contains bourbon between 12 and 15 years. The mash bill is made up of 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. So I've spent some considerable time with this bourbon, getting it down below the shoulder, really spent some time thinking about it off camera, and trying it, neat, trying a little bit of water, trying it on ice. And this is a bourbon I really have had high hopes for. It's not inexpensive. It's about $150 a bottle. Let's start off with the color. So it has that sort of red tinge in it. It kind of looks like Booker's, and then it has that very dark amber color there, and pretty heavy viscosity on the nose. Up front, you're getting the sweet fig notes, dates, raisins, all that comes from the sherry. Little plum, black cherry. So on the nose, if you were doing this blind right up front, you might go, okay, I think this is a Scotch. If you work really hard at it, in the back, you do start to get some of the bourbon notes. Classic bourbon, of course. You're talking caramels, and you're talking maybe apple and cinnamon and nutmeg and baking spices, and then the heavy sort of oak notes. And of course, you typically get some sort of corn from bourbon, canned corn, cream corn, candied corn, something like that. You have to work on it, but eventually it does sort of show through. On the palate, up front, you get the sherry notes. Fig, dates, raisins. The bourbon notes start to kick in the mid towards the finish. A little bit of corn, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon. But the Oloroso sherry notes are hanging in there. They are trying to be dominant in this bourbon. And then it kind of goes to a dry, nutty, almost peanut butter-like finish, which is not a completely uncommon note found in bourbons. It has a medium sweetness to it. There is a slight salty character on the back end on the finish on it. This is a really difficult bourbon to rate and to figure out. I have been going back and forth with this whiskey, loving it one second and hating it the next. And I think different people are going to have different responses to it. I think this bourbon is sort of fighting with itself. I think some of the sherry notes are conflicting with the bourbon notes. They aren't playing well together. They aren't intermingling and are naturally going together. I think its identity, on one hand, one part of its identity wants to play itself off as a Scotch. I think another part wants to play itself off as a bourbon, and it's not really working well together. It's fighting with itself. This is $150 some odd, maybe even more where you're at, bourbon. It's a little challenging to get. I like it. It's good. It's interesting. I think it's fascinating what they're trying to do with it. The development is okay, but for me, there's just a certain component to it that seems to be fighting with itself. If you were to drink this and taste this without really thinking about it, I think it's good, but it's not great. At $150 and this real fancy presentation, I had high expectations for it. The presentation exceeds the bourbon. The idea, the concept behind it really seems to, I think, have set you up for high expectations for it, and you're really going to demand a lot from it. But I think the delivery falls a little short. I think it's a good whiskey. It's an interesting whiskey. If you're a bourbon lover and you want classic bourbon notes, I don't think this is for you. If you're a Scotch lover and you like something from the Highlands, this heavily sherried cask Scotches, I think you're gonna taste this and you're gonna go, I can see some similarities there. This is sort of attractive, and yet on the back end and the mid palate, it's not carrying it out. Why would I pay $150 for this when I can go buy a Scotch that has similar characteristics and has a better follow through. I think that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to the mid-palate transition and the follow through. That's where it just isn't playing really well. And if you're gonna go this far with the aesthetics of the bottle, the presentation, and you're gonna have a price tag on that, you've really got to carry it through. And for me, this isn't working. It's not bad, it's not horrible, it just isn't $150. I don't think it lives up to expectations. Well, what I give in terms of a score, I'm gonna go 88 points. 88 points. But for $150 and this beautiful presentation, this should be a 90 plus bourbon. This should be a higher ranking bourbon. This should be a bourbon that has the wow factor and blows you away. Frankly, there are a lot of bourbons for a third of the price that I would rather have, that I would really enjoy and would really bring the wow factor. In fact, Wild Turkey, I think, has some much more affordable bourbons that I would like more in this. Again, it's not bad, it's not off-putting, it's not gonna make it go blech, you know, it's not like that. It just doesn't live up to, I think, to its presentation. All right, that's it for this review. If you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you've had this and you disagree with me, I want to hear your comments down below because I'm really interested. I think different people are going to come away with something different. I think this is going to be a whiskey that people are going to be disagreeing on. But if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I want to ask you to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and other social networking channels. Until next time, cheers. Hey, if you like my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.